What's happening, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us on this Adventure Box podcast. Hey, my name is Zach Edwards. I'm the CEO of Historical Conquest, who's bringing this to you. This is a game where you're able to learn history just by having fun playing a game. It's like 70% fun, 30% educational, because every time you come back, you're going to continue to learn a little bit more. Now, today we're going to be talking about Greece. Not just Greece, but a very specific war. This is the war that was a major turning point in the Greek society. Today we're going to dive into basically the most turbulent and transformative period of Greek history, which is basically the Peloponnesian War and the cultural achievements that were followed because of the Peloponnesian War. Now, we're going to go into... It's going to give you a little bit more heads up on that, but we're going to get to that when we get there. The Peloponnesian War was between 431 and 404 BC. It was a devastating conflict between Athens and Sparta, two of the most powerful city-states in Greece. Actually, I want to show you this. This is the Delian League. This is basically all of the city-states, the major city-states, and their power. Now, Athens, as you can see, yellow. Yellow, 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 all along the coast. Yellow. Wow. That was the league that they had set up. That's Athens and its allies. Now, Sparta is down here in red. So you see it says Sparta right here. It's Sparta down in the lower part of Greece and just around Athens. Actually, right there, that's where the Persians lost their last battle. Okay. Then you also had those that were, you had Persia was still there. They were still there. And then you had blue. What's blue? Blue is neutral. They did not pick a side in the Peloponnesian War. So this was, these were the two most powerful city-states. Everyone else pins to them. And now, Macedonia, you see this one right here. This was, again, where, who came from? Alexander the Great. Later on, we're going to get to that. Okay, but even as the war raged, Greece saw incredible intellectual, artistic, and scientific advancements. How does that happen during a huge war like this, where your own country is split into two? This is basically like the civil war of the ancient Greece. So the Peloponnesian War. We're going to talk about some things that have to do with what caused the conflict, what were key battles, and how did it change Greece forever. Another thing we're going to be talking about today, Greek philosophy and science. How did Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle shape the way that we think today? What contributions did early scientists like Hippocrates, and not Hippocrates, and Pythagoras come up with? Pythagoras. Oh, wait a minute. You've heard that. Where did you hear that? Math. That's right. Okay, so let's go into it. Well, one more thing. We're also going to be talking about the classic Greek art and theater. I don't have many images for that, but we will be talking about that. So let's travel again. Back 2,500 years ago. This was a long time ago. 2,500 years ago, back BC. And let's witness the downfall of Athens and the rise of the great thinkers and the solidifying of what classic Greece was. Okay, first, the Peloponnesian War. Peloponnesian War. Whew. Try saying that 10 times fast. Peloponnesian. Now try to put a war in there. Peloponnesian War. It's actually not that hard. Okay, never mind. So let's go into it. So as I said, Sparta is down here. Athens is right here. You had a lot of movements that were going on. The Athenians had a navy, a very large navy, and came to attack the back of Spartan's own island. And where else did they go? They went up north to Macedonia as well. Now remember, Macedonia is its own group at this point. They are not siding with anyone except for themselves. You also had a lot of neutral ground, which they wanted to stay out of this conflict. So that's how it began. Sparta had its soldiers cross land, while Athens crossed by sea. and also had their armies out here as well. This is just a little bit more of the magnitude of this battle. So again, you have the Persians up here, you have Thrace, you have Illyria, yeah, I said right, Italy, Sicily. Now, in here you have Athens, which is, in this one, it's red. Red, 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 red. This is the Delian League. They're all on Athens' side. The blue is all on the Spartan side. And as you can see, Macedonia actually does side in the end with Sparta, probably because they saw where the war was going. But we're going to get there when we get there. So the Peloponnesian War was a clash of these two great powers, Spartans and Athens. And the Athenians had a naval empire. So this is, you see why it's all red? It's because their navy took over everything that was connected by sea. Anything they could attach to, they wanted to conquer and make their own. So Athens was trying to grow larger. Sparta did not like the fact that they were growing so big so fast. Okay, so after defeating Persia, Athens grew rich, powerful, and also their egos grew just a little bit too much. Now, their success led to the Delian League, which is basically everything in red. That's the Delian League. And they used the Delian League to build back Sparta after it was destroyed by the Persians. Now, Sparta saw this as a threat to the Greek independence. They feared Athens was turning the League into an empire because they were spreading out. They spread out so much that the other city-states in Greece did not like that. Now, tensions started to boil. They didn't just boil, they boiled over when Corinth and other city-states asked Sparta to intervene. Oh, wait a second. So it wasn't just Sparta versus Athens. No, it wasn't. There were other city-states that were fearing this empire. Sparta was the military-esque civilization, society at this time. So all these blue states were asking Sparta to step in. Now, let's go through a few of the key points, a few events in the war. You had the Athenian plague, 430 BC. Disaster strikes Athens, just destroys it because of a disease. So early in the war, Athens was struck by this devastating disease, killing 1/3 of its population. That's devastating. This included their great leader, Pericles. Now, with him out of the way and 1/3 of their people dead, this weakened Athens. Now, I don't know what kind of plague that was. I would like to know what kind of plague that was. I know there's a lot of theories of what that plague was, but they don't know exactly what that plague was. But it killed off 1/3 of their people. Even COVID didn't kill off 1/3 of our people. It killed off 100. We have 300 million people, and it killed off 1 to 2, maybe up to 5 million. Let's just say 2 million. That's 1/150th of the entire. So, yeah, it was devastating. So this weakened them both militarily and politically, which also set the stage for a lot more battles. Now again, this is when the war naturally began, or actually began, 430 BC. Just remember that. So 431 is when the other states asked the Spartans to come in and intervene. 430 is when this plague was released. Did they have actual scientists that could have released a biological warfare on Athens? Yeah, not likely. Not this time. Maybe they did, but most likely not likely. But the plague did destroy them. It killed them all. It devastated them. So you had the Sicilian expedition. Athens' biggest mistake. This is one of their biggest mistakes. In 415 BC, Athens launched an invasion into Sicily. Why in the world would you go after Sicily when you have Sparta coming after you. Well, they were hoping to conquer Syracuse. And Syracuse, not Cruz, Syracuse was an ally of Sparta. So it doesn't show it in this, but they were actually an ally of Sparta at this point, 415 BC. The expedition was a complete disaster. The Athenians basically lost thousands of their troops and most of their fleet, their navy fleet. They're making like bad choice after bad choice. This is almost like when you go into a football game and you're racking up points at the very beginning. By halftime, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. We're going to take them no problem. And then the second quarter happens. The second half happens. And all of a sudden, you start getting taken down because your ego, boom, has exploded. And because your ego's, boom, so big, you think you're all that in a bag of chips, and you're not. And so by 404 BC, Athens fell. Its democracy was dismantled, and Sparta became the dominant power of all of Greece. Okay, that's a devastating blow. Now, and there's a lot of years, and there's a lot more to learn about. It's in the text. I can't go over everything. It just takes way too much time. So go into our textbook. You'll read more about that. Now, the impact of the war. This is very important. Greece was left weakened and divided, which basically paved the way for the rise of where? What's the one group that stayed out of this mostly? It's Macedonia. So Macedon and Alexander the Great began to become more powerful. Sparta had lost a lot of their people. Athens lost a whole lot of their people. Athenian democracy was briefly overthrown, but later restored. Just so you know, it was later restored, though it never was as strong as it was. Remember the assembly, the courts that they had, not the assembly 500, the group of 500, the lottery that basically made the laws for the assembly to debate and to rule on. Now, despite political decline, Athens remained a center of philosophy, science, and art. They did not destroy it in that way because it was producing great things. Sparta basically just made sure that they didn't have the military strength to do what they were doing again. Okay, now Greek philosophy. Let's go into this. What was left over after the Peloponnesian War? So while Athens struggled politically, it became an intellectual powerhouse. And remember, they didn't have to worry about setting up a military. So if they didn't have to worry about setting up a military, they could put more time and effort into their philosophy, artwork, things like that. And this spurred three very, very important people: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They were the foundation of Western thought. So let's go into who was Socrates. So Socrates was the questioner. That is what he's known for. Socrates lived between 469 and 399 BC. He was the father of Western philosophy, known for asking questions to expose ignorance and challenge set beliefs. This is what Socrates did. He never wrote down any of his ideas. Instead, his students, including Plato, which we're going to talk about in just a second, preserved them in their dialogues. So they shared it orally. It became an oral tradition. Remember, Linear B was destroyed. They didn't have as much of a written law until Athens became larger than life. And then they started writing down. And then there was a time of no writing down. Well, just so you know, because of what he did, some of the things he did, he was actually sentenced to death in 399 BC for corrupting the youth, making the youth question the philosophies that Greece was known for. Were there many gods? Well, the youth didn't believe that. Some of them went to monotheism. Some of them didn't believe in God after that. So, under this order of being sentenced to death, he was forced to drink a poison called hemlock. Now, at the same time that he died, Plato came into play. Now, Plato was one of his students, one of his youth that were corrupted. He founded what is called the Academy. It is the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. So he believed in a world of ideal forms, arguing that reality is just a shadow of a higher truth. Sounds like religion. Interesting, isn't it? His most famous work was called The Republic. Actually, I think we have a card on The Republic, but it describes his vision of a perfect government. The Republic. Well, Greece did have a republic, and he did write about the Republic. And even though the Republic comes back, it wasn't as perfect as he was hoping. Now, this also brought into somebody else. This was Plato's student. So Plato, you had Socrates taught Plato. Plato taught Aristotle. Aristotle was alive between 384 BC and 322 BC. Plato's student, Aristotle, studied everything from biology, politics, logic, and ethics. And who did he tutor? This is where we're getting to it. This is what we're doing. We're getting to this. He tutored Alexander the Great in Macedonia, or Macedon, shaping the next generation of rulers. Now, that being said, we will get back to him when we get to Alexander the Great next week. Let's go into science and medicine. So, who was the father of medicine? Hippocrates. He's such a hypocrite. Hippocrates rejected superstition. He actually argued that disease had a natural cause and that it could be treated. His Hippocratic oath, taken by doctors today, basically emphasized medical ethics. So the Hippocratic oath, do no harm. This is taught to doctors all around the world right now. They all take the Hippocratic oath, at least in the United States, of a ethics around medicine. That's what Hippocrates did. Now, Pythagoras was also great. He was not the father of math, but he was a developer of math. Hippocrates lived between 570 BC and 485 BC. Now, this is before Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. Well, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. Reversed. Pythagoras, he developed the famous Pythagoras theorem in geometry. So that's the reason why we have that. He also believed that music and numbers were linked in harmony to the whole universe. So very interesting, his philosophies. So music and numbers, actually math. Math, we today still believe that math is the universal language because languages are all different, but numbers are numbers. You can send them anywhere and they can understand the numbers. So we've actually sent numbers up into space trying to communicate with other people. Now music, I mean, yeah, you're stretching there, Pythagoras. You're really stretching that. Music is the, well, okay, it's not the language, but he says it's the harmony of the universe. Okay, I could believe that. Music, think about it. Music, the rhymes, the sounds, because every type of music was basically origined in nature, in reality, in not synthesized. It's later on that we synthesized it. But at this point, all music is made natural back in Greece. Now, that's the philosophy side in math and science. What about the art? Holy cow, I'm falling behind. Look at this. So this, I have an image here of a stone with Greek writing. This is a tribute stone. This is a list of the tributes from other countries, other city-states. This is their art. So this is just one piece of pottery. This is actually a piece of pottery that talks about the Peloponnesian War and the Greek versus Greek. That's right. They were fighting themselves. Somewhat. So the classic period of Greece saw the peak of Greek drama, the theater, sculptures everywhere, architecture, and it influenced it for centuries. We still build Greek pillars all over the place. In like everyday life, we're still using Greek columns. We're still using pottery that was developed by those in Crete, the Minoan civilization, which then was passed down through Athens and all of Greece. So let's talk about the Greek theater. Let's start with that. Tragedy and comedy. That's right. Those are the two big ones that they focused on. Greek tragedy explored fate, suffering, the human flaws. These are all the things that they focused on. Because really, this was the first basic artwork that was actually created, was acting artwork. So their theater was focusing on all the frailties of humans. Sophocles, he wrote, and I'm going to butcher this one, Oedipus, well, I guess I'm not, Oedipus Rex. I did remember it. Oedipus Rex, the tragic story of a man doomed by philosophy. Look it up. It's a great one. And then you had Euripides, 480 to 406 BC. He challenged tradition. He wrote plays like Medea, which focused on strong female characters. Now this was the tragedy side. Comedy, you have Aristophanes. There we go. Aristophanes. He used satire and criticism to criticize politics, society, and people. His play, Lysistrata, humorously depicted women ending war by refusing to sleep with their husbands. I mean, that's effective, especially in Greece. So the advancement of sculptures and architecture, that's also a big one. Now, that was the first one was just theater. We're going to be talking about sculptures and architecture. And remember, we're not going to go much into the pottery, but that's also part of it. Greek sculptures became more lifelike. This is, again, all these great statues in Greece were less lifelike and they became more lifelike. They focused on the human body and the presence and the nudity. It's true. So they captured movement and emotion in their pictures, in their sculptures. Masterpieces like the Discopolis. You might know this as the disc thrower. So the perfect form where the disc is in the hand and they release at a certain point. Now their architecture reached new heights. We already talked about Parthenon, but also had other masterpieces all throughout Greece. This was the time. It was about 447 BC to about 432 BC, the classical age of architecture. And up to the time of the Peloponnesian War, when things started to fall apart and they would have to rebuild. Okay, so the Peloponnesian War, let's basically recap everything. The Peloponnesian War marked a decline in Athens as a political powerhouse. But its cultural and intellectual legacy continued to shape the world. Greek philosophy and science laid the foundation for modern thought and medicine. Classic art, theater, and architecture influenced basically a renaissance for the Greeks. A renaissance, a revival of it, and influenced it beyond. Because even today, we still use a lot of the same art, theater, architecture, and such. Now, despite the war and hardship that was felt in the Peloponnesian War, Athens became immortal. Not through conquest, but through its ideas. So I got an action question for you. Very important action question. Which Greek philosopher, you're going to have to study all this on your own. Again, it's in the text, so read on the text. Which Greek philosopher or artist do you think had the greatest impact in history? Ooh, that's a great one. Okay, So, do you side with, let's go through just the three that we already talked about. Do you side with Socrates? Now remember, Socrates was the father of Western philosophy, asking questions to expose ignorance and challenging beliefs. Or do you side more with Plato, a philosopher of ideal form? This is how things should be, even though they are not right now. He's the one that wrote the Republic, created the academy, the first higher education, but believed in ideal forms and how reality is just a shadow of a higher truth. Now, I'm going to go over one more. Aristotle. Aristotle was Plato's student, and he studied everything from logic, biology, politics, and such. So, not much on what he taught in my notes. It's in the text. But then he actually taught Alexander the Great, which is why he becomes one of the more important philosophers during this time. You also have the father of medicine, Hippocrates, and the Hippocratic Oath. You have Pythagoras in his mathematical genius. So you have all these different philosophers. You also have different artists in the theaters, in the sculpting. Take a look, think about it, put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about, again, which Greek philosopher or artist do you think had the greatest impact on history? And we will keep this and save it for later. Please put them in the comments below. Give me any questions you might have, ways that we can improve. We're up for it. Thank you so much. We will talk to you soon. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.